Hey friends, it's Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. And in today's reading vlog, I will be rereading Siege and Storm by Leigh Bardugo because Shadow and Bone Season 2 is about to come out, and I thought, well, what better book to reread and revisit than the second book in the Shadow and Bone Trilogy or the Grisha Trilogy. I'm not even sure at this point what we're calling it anymore. But yes, this is the second book in the trilogy, and I'm assuming that it's what Season 2 is mostly going to be based on. I read this back in 2017, so it's been some time, and my reading tastes have changed drastically since then. I'm a very different reader than I was then. When I first read this, I was very much an Alina and Darkling shipper, and I am not the most proud of that. We don't do abusive relationships anymore. In fact, I'm not really sure that Alina should end up with any of the men in this series, but whatever, we'll get to that. My main goal with this is to revisit the events that happen in this book and refamiliarize myself with them so that I will know how accurate the show is in Season 2, how accurate it stays to the books, because Season 1 was quite accurate, all things considered. And my cat is in here, by the way, and he's in one of his weird moods. He gets this way whenever his favorite human is not at home, so that would be my mom. So if you can hear him, please just ignore him. Anyway, where was I going with this? Oh yes, my goal is to outline the events that take place in this book so that if you haven't read the books but you watch the show and you're just curious how true it stays, then you can compare the two with this video. Obviously there will be some spoilers involved as we go through the events of this book. I'm trying not to do any major spoilers, just the events will be explained generally as they happen, but there will probably be some spoilers involved just to give you a fair warning and a fair heads up. I don't remember where Season 1 of Shadow and Bone left off because honestly it's just been like 2 years at this point, and I'm thinking that it pretty much left off where the first book leaves off and where this book picks up, and that is that Alina has gone against the Darkling's wishes. He tried to use the Shadowfold as a weapon. She stopped him, and there was a fight. They hoped he died in the Shadowfold. He didn't die in the Shadowfold. Spoiler alert, he's still alive, and if you've seen the trailer, then you know that. And Alina and Mal are now on the run. Alina doesn't want anything to do with this Sun Summoner business, and she doesn't want the Darkling to find her because he will use her power through the amplifier that she has acquired. And so they're on the run. They just want to go into hiding and live a normal life and escape all of this nonsense, and of course the Darkling is hunting them. I've got like 40 pages read so far this morning. That's basically what happened. Alina and Mal, they ran away, they took a ship to another country, and they're just living and trying to eke out a life here, and then of course the Darkling has hunted them down and caught them, and they're all on a ship together at this point. We've just been introduced to a character named Sturmhond, who is, of course, spoiler alert, if you didn't already know, is Prince Nikolai. Come to find out, he is the Prince of Ravka, and right now he's masquerading as his privateer alter ego Sturmhond. I'm actually liking his character a lot more this second time around than I did originally. I thought he was just kind of cringe and the banter didn't really work, but I'm appreciating the banter this time around. I think the banter in Six of Crows was better than most in YA. It just was a little bit too much, like it went on too long, or sometimes it tried to try too hard. But speaking of Six of Crows, that's another thing that needs to be addressed before we go any further in this reading vlog. So in case you didn't know, in case you just watched the show and you didn't read the books, most of what you see in Season 1 of Shadow and Bone with the Crow characters didn't happen. That's all made up. These two books don't happen simultaneously. Six of Crows takes place after the events of the Grisha Trilogy, and Six of Crows is of course the more popular and the more well-loved. I think it is the better written, and the characters are more fleshed out, so I'm in agreement with people there. I liked it better. And obviously I think that the inclusion of the Six of Crows characters in Shadow and Bone Season 1 made the viewing experience overall better, even though most of what you see didn't actually take place. The reason I say that most of it didn't take place is because some of it did, and what did take place in the book is what you see of the interactions between Nina and Matthias. That did actually happen, but everything else with the other Crows characters did not. And in fact, if you weren't aware of that already, we haven't even been introduced to all of the characters that will eventually make up the Six of Crows gang, as it were. So I just wanted to throw that out there. That's not actually in connection with this book. None of that stuff with the Crows happened aside from Nina and Matthias's adventure that's going on. The Grisha Trilogy was originally just supposed to be about Alina and Alina's story. Obviously they threw the Crow characters in there in the Netflix adaptation because it would draw more viewers in. I'm not complaining. I think they've done a great job thus far. In fact, this is part of why I was so disappointed with the direction they decided to take with the Lockwood & Co adaptation, because they did such an amazing job with Shadow and Bone staying accurate as much as possible to the source material, that I expected that they would just naturally give Lockwood and Co. the same treatment, and I don't think that they did. So whatever, we're not going to talk about that. I haven't watched it. I'm not going to watch it. That's not what this vlog is about. So this afternoon, my plan is to get some more reading done. I have to do my own writing, obviously, and today I also have to do my official title reveal for my upcoming, soon-to-be released for pre-order, debut novel, and I guess I can go ahead and say it because by the time this video goes up, it will already be announced. So that is Lightbringer. I'm going to be releasing details about Lightbringer in the upcoming days to weeks, and I'm both excited and terrified. Last night in particular was really difficult. The doubts crept in and I was like, my thought process wasn't that what if this book isn't good, because I know that it's good. For the first time in my life, I feel like this book knows what it wants to be. It knows the kind of story that it wants to tell. My thoughts were more like, what if nobody buys it? What if it doesn't sell? What if the marketing doesn't work? More like that kind of thing, because obviously I want the book to be in the hands of as many people as possible, and a lot of that rests in large part on marketing. I have to convince people to buy this book, and I don't consider myself an expert on marketing. I'm a writer, I'm not a marketer. So yeah, the doubts were just really like crowding in last night. I was like, my book goes up for pre-order in 3 weeks, and it's weird because that's not something that I'm unaware of. Like, of course it does. I know that. I've been planning for this for months, but it just kind of hit me in that moment. So I'm terrified. I have to do that today, like actually right now. As soon as I shut up, I'm gonna go do that. I decided to do it after this clip because I wouldn't be able to focus on filming and talking about Siege and Storm at all if I did it beforehand. But yeah, let's just go and dive further into this. So obviously it is the next day and I'm just popping up to get this update on my phone really quick because I didn't want to break the camera out for it. I hope that you can hear me and everything is fine with that. But yeah, so today apparently my area where I live is under a severe weather threat, and we have a 2 to 5% risk of seeing a tornado within 25 miles of any given point, which obviously that's not that high, but it's higher than the 0 that we'd like it to be. So, and the weather radio just went off to say that we are under a tornado watch, and it scared the crud out of me. So needless to say, the rest of my day will be occupied with getting my writing done if I'm able. For all I know, we could lose power, or obviously keeping an eye on the weather. So my reading for the day is pretty much done, but I did want to update you guys really quickly on Siege and Storm. So let's talk about that. Oh, this is hard, and it looks, my arm's getting tired. So going through the reviews of this book, a lot of people hate this book, and I'm not exactly sure why. Like, obviously, I don't think it is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I don't like it as much as I did when I read it way back in 2017. However, the reason that a lot of people seem to hate this book is because of Mal, and that's it. They ship certain people with Alina, and if the ship's not going the way that they want, then they hate the book. They hate Mal a lot, and while that's valid, I don't necessarily think that Mal deserves all of the hate that he gets, and I think that the show did a really good job in making Mal a more likable character than he is in the book. I get that he's whiny and that he's jealous, and that's another thing that confuses me, the jealousy thing. Like, obviously I'm not a romance reader, so don't come at me for this, but I thought that jealousy, while it is in real life an ugly emotion, I thought that that was what people wanted in romance books. They wanted the guy to be jealous, and they wanted him to protect the girl and all these things. And it seemed like as a positive thing in a lot of romance books, but in this case, Mal being jealous is very much a negative thing in the mind of a lot of readers, and I think that's just because people don't like Mal, they don't ship Alina with Mal, and yet that's ultimately, I think, who Alina is supposed to end up with, if I remember correctly, spoilers, but yeah, so if things don't seem to be going their way with the shipping, people hate the book just because of the ship, and I think that that is a little bit ridiculous, but also maybe it's the risk that you run when you create a love triangle, or in this case a love dodecahedron, as I saw one person put it. There is 3 different love interests. There's Mal, of course, there's the Darkling, of course, and then there's Nikolai, who his identity was just revealed. So let's go over what I have read and what has happened so far. So what I did get read today, what happened was that Nikolai betrayed the Darkling. He was working with the Darkling and helped the Darkling catch Alina, and then he betrayed the Darkling and took Alina for himself, and they've run off, and now they have captured the Sea Whip, which is the ice dragon, water dragon, sea serpent thing that's on the cover, and it's an amplifier. It's one of Morozov's amplifiers along with the stag. And so they kill it, Alina kills it, and so she gets to claim its power as her own, and she does, and she now has a second amplifier, which no Grisha was ever meant to have more than one amplifier, but now she has it, and her powers are even stronger, and she's trying to do this because she thinks this is the only way she could possibly stand up to the Darkling. In the process of that, Alina learns that there's actually a third amplifier, the Firebird, and so now she wants to hunt it down to complete the amplifiers to bring them together, and obviously with the end goal being that she will bring down the Darkling. However, in the process of this, it's very clear that Alina is starting to seek power for its own sake, which I think is really interesting and quite possibly, if I remember correctly, never fully explored in this book. I don't remember a lot of what happens in this book, and I think that's because of this feeling that I'm getting that's returning to me, and I seem to remember that when I read this book initially, it was very boring to me because it's full of like political intrigue and machinations and things, and while I would probably find that way more interesting to read now, when I read this book initially when I was still a teenager, I did not like that aspect of it. Another thing I do remember is that the Darkling seems to escape and then keep coming back every time Alina confronts him. He somehow manages to get away, and that's why this is a trilogy. It's why it gets dragged out into 3 books, and I don't think you can necessarily do that very many times without it working out. I think that the villain can only get away so many times before it really gets repetitive and boring for the reader and also disappointing. I guess if you're going to have the villain constantly escape, you need to be original about it. You need to have it happen differently every single time. But anyway, Nikolai has brought Alina back to Ravka. They just crash landed and were come upon by some Ravkan soldiers who demanded to know why they were there and who they were, and of course that's when Nikolai reveals his true identity. He is actually the prince, the second prince of Ravka. So that's basically where I've left off here, after this conversation in which Nikolai proposes marriage to Alina, which she does not accept. It's not a marriage of love, it would be a marriage of convenience, of political alliance, because he wants to unite Ravka and save the country. And he thinks that Alina probably should want that too, but obviously Mal was not happy with this suggestion of marriage, and he and Nikolai were at each other's throats, and well, I don't think that Nikolai helped matters by rattling Mal's chain. Mal is just that easy to irritate. It's almost like you can't resist. So that's basically where I'm at now. Not a lot has happened so far, and honestly I don't even remember what happened after this, but that's all the reading I'm probably going to do for today. I will definitely be keeping an eye on the sky today, and hopefully we won't be seeing any tornadoes. Like the lighting in here this time of day. So another quick update. I did get a little bit more read today of the book, and I wanted to run by you what has happened. So not a lot has happened actually, and I think that's because we're in the political intrigue section of the book. I don't dislike this as much this time around as I did before, and I think that maybe just speaks to the different kind of reader that I am now versus when I read the book last time. But Alina, Nikolai, and their entourage have arrived back at the palace, and Alina and Mal, despite being deserters essentially, have been spared, and Alina has been granted control over the second army, which is the Grisha. The first army are normal soldiers who are not Grisha. There has been a fracture between the two since the Darkling's betrayal, because obviously he is not only a Grisha, he was the leader of the Grisha, and so the first army soldiers look at the second army soldiers with suspicion and resentment. So Alina is given charge of the second army. She has a mixed reception from the Grisha who remain, who have not gone over to the Darkling's side. She manages to convince them to follow her, or basically threatens them if they don't follow her, so they're convinced one way or the other, and Alina will be staying at the little palace in the quarters that once belonged to the Darkling. She has been seeing visions of him appear to her at random moments that are often very distracting and inopportune in their timing, and in this latest vision the Darkling actually reaches out and it touches her, which she was sure wouldn't be able to happen because this isn't real in the first place, but something clearly is going on here and we don't yet know what it is or how it's possible. I remembered that this happened, but I don't remember the explanation behind it, so it'll be interesting to figure that out. But other than that, nothing much has really happened, and I'm thinking that Maybe the Crow characters in the season 2 adaptation will kind of come more into the forefront to help move things along, because the political intrigue, while it's not boring to read this time around, I don't necessarily think that it would be the most exciting thing to watch. But we will see what happens, and that's really all I have to tell you in this update. I keep thinking like I'm forgetting some major point that would be useful to convey to people for them to know, but I can't think of what that might be at this point. Hello, friends. So the first thing that I did this morning was upload my very first reel to Instagram, and for some reason it uploaded with no sound, even though I put sound on there. So that was very embarrassing. I feel like I don't know what I'm doing, and I had to delete it and then re-upload it. And at first I saved it as a draft. Maybe that messed it up somehow, I don't know. And then it was weird, like after I chose the audio and I trimmed it to what part I wanted, it took me to another page where it was talking about like adding things, and it turned my camera on, and it's like, what is this? I don't want to add anything to it. So I feel very stupid, and I guess that's a measure of how this day is going to go. But yes, I finished the book. So let's talk about it. I have 3 things I want to talk about, and that is the Apparat's cult, Mal, and how this book ends. So really not a lot happens in this book. The majority of it is just political intrigue and planning things, preparing for war, and gathering alliances. Pretty much after Nikolai brings Alina back to Ravka, that's all that happens until you get to the very end. So I don't have anything specific to talk about in those sections, really. The one thing that I wanted to mention previously that I felt like maybe I was forgetting something was the Apparat's cult. So the Apparat, if you don't remember, he's like a priest, and I'm pretty sure he was in season 1. But anyway, I can't really remember. But he's a priest, and he has created this cult of the Sun Saint. He is spreading these rumors that Alina died on the fold and was reborn as a saint, and she's come to save Ravka and all this stuff, and there are these pilgrims who believe all this drivel, and so she has a cult of followers now. And the reason I mention this is because I'm pretty sure this is going to obviously be shown in season 2 and play a role, so that's what's going on with that. This priest has created this cult. Alina doesn't like it, she thinks it's kind of creepy, and it is, but it is what it is. So with that out of the way, let's talk about Mal. In my last clip, I think I was talking about how people don't like this book, and the reason they don't like this book is because they seem not to like Mal, and they don't like Mal because they ship Alina with another character, namely the Darkling or Nikolai, but the book seems to want to ship Alina with Mal, and Alina wants to ship Alina with Mal, so people don't like that. And at first I was thinking, you know, Mal gets a lot of hate for no reason, but as I read on, I don't like Mal either. Now, I don't think that Alina should be with the Darkling, even though he does admittedly understand her probably better than Mal ever could. He isn't wrong when he says that there are no others like he and Alina, and therefore no one can really understand it. They're the only ones with this sort of power, and I get that, and he can totally understand Alina in a way that Mal cannot. The reason that I don't like Mal in this book is because he's so he's so whiny, he's so broody, he spends the majority of this book wandering around feeling sorry for himself because Alina won't choose me. And Alina bears some of the blame for this as well. She is not good at communicating, and neither is he. And if they would just sit down and talk about things, I think things would get better. But Mal is so whiny. He's like, I don't belong here and all this stuff. And it's like, who freaking cares? This isn't about you. And that's what I wish the characters would realize. He and Alina both need to realize that this isn't about them and their little love story. There are more important things at stake here, namely the fate of Ravka as a country. They need to stop the Darkling, because if they don't, more people are going to die. And I want to tell Mal that, shut up. Stop complaining. You're alive. As long as you're alive, you can get the girl, you can fix things, whatever. But there are a lot of people who are not alive because the Darkling's actions have led to their deaths indirectly or otherwise. And if you guys don't shape up, get your crap together, and stop him, more people are going to die. But instead, their main focus seems to be their love interest. And I don't like this kind of love in stories. I'm not a romance reader, and maybe if I was, I would be more into this, but I don't like when a character's feelings for each other, let's call it love, weakens them. It's a hindrance. It gets in the way of what they ultimately need to do. It makes the characters weaker, and I don't like that. I like the love that they have to strengthen them, to bolster them, to help make whatever it is they're facing, whatever they need to do, easier. And that's not what we have here. Alina knows what she needs to do. She is the leader of the Second Army now. She's trying to rebuild the Grisha. She's trying to shore up the palace's defenses because the Darkling is going to attack with his Nichiboya things. And she can't focus on any of that fully because she's worried about Mal. Mal, you know, moaning over here about everything and, you know, blah, blah, blah. Mal is incredibly insecure. That's part of the problem. And again, Alina doesn't help this in that she doesn't reinforce to him, she doesn't make it clear to him that she loves him and only him, and he doesn't have to worry about other people like Nikolai. So Alina is partly to blame for that, but also Mal is just incredibly insecure, and you know, for the two of them having grown up together in an orphanage, he's just really insecure. I hope that they change this in season 2. I really do. I think that in season 1 they did a better job with Mal's character. I don't think people disliked him as much as they do in the book. Obviously, because a lot of people know the Mal from the book, though, this is a big hurdle that's going to need to be overcome. But Mal is just really annoying in the book. And I'm not saying Alina's perfect. She bears some of the blame for this as well, but they need to realize that this isn't about them. Mal needs to set aside his discomfort, his feelings that he doesn't belong here, and say, this is more important. We can focus on our own problems after we've defeated the Darkling. Let's move on to the Darkling. The Darkling now has this ability where he can conjure these Nichiboya things. I'm probably saying that wrong, I'm mispronouncing that. Basically, he can summon shadow soldiers, and they're more powerful than the Volcra that were in the fold because the only thing that seems to stop them is Alina's light. Bullets, swords, doesn't seem to bother them. This is not the normal magic that Grisha can use because the Darkling is creating matter. He's basically creating life, and so rather than making him stronger by using this magic, it actually weakens him. It takes something from him. It costs him to make these soldiers. And so in the final confrontation of this book, Alina calls to his power through the bond that they share with her collar, the stag antlers, which is an amplifier that she has. She also now has the sea dragon scales as another amplifier, but through the connection that they share through the first amplifier, she calls upon his power and controls it as he controlled hers at the end of season 1. And through that connection, she forces the Darkling to basically create more and more of these shadow soldiers, which weakens both of them as they do it. And Alina's intention in that moment fully is to kill both of them. That doesn't happen. Mal ends up dragging her away, but she has created enough of these shadow soldiers that she gives them the command to collapse the chapel on top of them, hopefully thus killing the Darkling, which is exactly what happens, except he's not dead. Of course not. Somehow he manages to get away. And this sat ill with me when I read it initially way back in 2017 because it's another one of those instances where you almost have the villain dead and yet they get away again. And I think that you can only do that so many times. I do think it was kind of a clever idea that Alina had to use his own power against him, but obviously it didn't follow through with it all of the way. The end result of this is that Alina is taken through this underground cavern to where the cult of the Sun Saint is and the apparat. She is left severely weakened as a result of this. Her hair is turned completely white and she cannot use her power at the end of book 2. That's a very important point. She just can't summon the light for whatever reason. I don't remember why this is. What I do remember moving on into book 3 is that she spends an inordinate amount of time with the apparat and amongst these cultists, and it was very boring to read. I absolutely hated the apparat. So I didn't really like book 3. I think book 2 was my least favorite, but book 3 just didn't really do it for me either. And I didn't really like the way that this book ended in that the Darkling somehow managed to get away again because of course this is a trilogy and we have another book and we can't have him die at this point. So it is what it is. That's how it plays out in the book. I don't know how they're going to do it necessarily in season 2, but it's interesting to see. Those are my final thoughts on this book. I am not a fan of Mal, not necessarily because of the love triangle. I really don't think Alina should be with any of these people, but I think of the 3 she should be with Nikolai because he is one who has his priorities together. He knows what he wants, he knows what's important, and he's willing to do what needs to be done to get it. He wants to save Ravka. Alina and Mal are 2 people that need to get their crap together, get it figured out, because this is ridiculous. So anyway, there you have it. I hope that this was helpful or will be helpful and we can look back and compare the way that the events unfold in the book to what happens in the show. Obviously with season 2 you're going to have the Crow characters involved. I'm not exactly sure how they're going to be involved, if they're going to make up more things that didn't actually happen in the books or if they're just going to start the books events, I really don't know. So that will be interesting to see. Regardless, I can definitely see why the Six of Crows characters are definitely going to be included in this second season, because there's not a lot to the second book. There's a lot of political machinations and maneuvers going on, but that doesn't exactly make for a very interesting watch. It's probably more interesting to read, actually, and there's only so much you can do with that. There's only so much you can show. So I think that the Six of Crows characters might end up carrying this second season even more than the first. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed, feel free to leave a like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any future content. I appreciate each and every one of you, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!